Hello, buddy. Welcome back. I'm the Strategy Professor, and today we're going to be doing the tier list for support. So, as always, thanks for watching. Be sure to like and subscribe if you do enjoy the content. Check out the rest of the content on the channel as well. I'm just released patch notes video earlier today. We stream every night starting around 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till about 3 or 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Usually go till 3 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So come by, check it out. It's a very wonderful, chill community. I try to be as conversational as possible with the chat while also explaining everything that's going on in the game. So come on by. It's a great time. We also have lots of guides on the channel, coaching sessions, and tons of other content. So be sure to check all that out. And let's go ahead and get in here. So as always, you can find a link in the description to this Google Doc if you want to kind of scroll along and get the cheat sheets yourself. And then I'll also have timestamps. And you're always welcome to click on that cog on YouTube and speed it up to 1.25 or 1.5 speed if you want to go through it even faster. And within this Google Doc, I'll also have a little mini Google Doc which will show you recommended runes, recommended items, and then a 1 to 5 rating system that I created. So 1 being the champion is one of the worst at that role for whatever that task is. 5 being the champion is one of the best. So lane pressure is how likely can the champion get priority and harass the enemy. How fast can they clear waves. Kill threat is how likely is it that the champion can cause a kill in the laning phase. Safety is how safe is the champion, particularly from ganks in the early game. Scaling is how well does the champion perform over time. And then reliability is how likely is it that someone can perform well on this champion over many games. So part of that goes into how difficult the champion is to play in terms of mechanics and decisions, but part of that is also how well does the champion fit into the meta. Does it play well with other champions that are popular? Does it counter other champions on the enemy team that might be popular? Okay. So let's go ahead and get in here. We'll kick it off with Nami. So I think that Nami is going to be #1 overall right now. She does have a really high win rate, and you know, win rates aren't everything, but they certainly are a major indicator of strength of a champion, right? And Nami has come down a little bit. She did have like a 53 or 54% win rate. So she's not quite as high as she used to be, but I guess what patch? That's some pretty low data. I'm going to go back to patch 10.7 for the data here. So there's just much more data there. So she is still about 54 on 10.7 that we just finished. But she's just really well-rounded. I mean, she's got a point-click W. You can't miss it. And it also damages and heals on the same ability, so you don't have to worry about, you know, are you going to level up your offensive spell or your defensive spell like you would with Sona, right? Are you going to level up your Q or are you going to level up your W? She's got all of that built into one spell. Or like Janna, you know, there's attention. How many points do you put into your W for harassment versus how many points do you put into your shield for kind of that mid-game defense? You know, Nami's got it all on her W, so that's really handy. She's got the bubble for all-in, so she actually can threaten all-in kills in the laning phase, which is a lot harder to do with Janna and Sona because they don't have the hard CC. Nami does have that hard CC. It can hit multiple targets in the team fight later on. You can throw it through minions if you land it. So she has a lot of good things going for her. She also scales pretty well. Not as well as someone like Sona if she's left like unchecked. But she is going to scale fairly well. She's got some okay ratios with her bounces on her W because it not only affects the direct heal and the direct shield, but it also influences how much of a reduction each bounce is going to have. So, for example, if you have 100 AP, usually when this bounces, you get minus 15% each. But if you have 100 AP, then it's only going to be minus 7.5 each. So instead of going 7.5 twice multiplicatively, now it's only 0. And if you have 200 AP, then it's full damage, full healing on every single bounce. So that's going to be really powerful, in addition to the standard sort of ratios here. So if you do damage, heal, damage, you hit the enemy first, then it's going to be a 1.3 ratio. If you do heal, damage, heal, then it's going to be a 1.1 ratio. So not the craziest thing in the world. It can only heal up to 2 people, so it's not like massive AoE healing, but it's still pretty good. And then Surging Tides just gives some extra movement speed, allows a lot of these kind of meatball champions that are still really strong in the meta, your Sets, your Dariuses, they have been getting nerfed out a little bit, but they're still going to be really good. Your Garens, pretty much everybody's going to like move speed. And there are several champions that are super strong right now that are really balanced around someone being able to kite them. So adding in that extra movement speed is really handy. And then with the Tidecaller's Blessing, it does give that movement speed, but it also gives a slow on those auto attacks or spells. So now she can work really well with champions, you know, like Misfortune, like Cassiopeia, stuff like that that's going to be doing a lot of damage with their spells. Or Lucian. She's always worked really well with Lucian, but that's still going to work out really well. Vayne, she's really good with Vayne because it gives the movement speed so that she can dodge stuff easier and then run people down a lot easier with the slow and with the movement speed. So that's solid. And then Tidal Wave, it's pretty nice, really long range, pretty slow moving, decent hitbox to it. So that can be a real disruptive force as well whenever you're trying to engage on people. So overall, she's just really well-rounded, very aggressive, probably the most consistent aggression in the early game where you can sort of 1v2 the lane by yourself if they don't hard engage on you. And a lot of the hard engage champs have been nerfed, like the Leonas, like the Nautiluses, and things like that. So they're a lot less threatening than they used to be. So overall, super strong champion, particularly paired with Lucian, and pretty good with Vayne as well. So you just want to go Airy, Mana Flow Band, Absolute Focus, Scorch. If you can harass a lot during the laning phase, if you get stuck with an Ezreal or something, maybe you can go for Gathering Storm. And then you can go Conditioning and Revitalize. I think there's also a conversation we had for Taste of Blood, and then getting one of the Hunters. You could do Ravenous Hunter if you want even more sort of self-healing in the laning phase, or you could do the Movement Hunter or even the Ulti Hunter. All of those can be good. But Taste of Blood for the trading is very, very good on a champion like Nami, who trades so easily in the laning phase. So I think that could be pretty legit as well. And then you just want to usually build up Athene's, Ardent Sensor, and Redemption. And I'm going to say like a Shirelia's in there too. I think this is one of the most underrated items out there. And you'll see this as a common theme with a lot of champs that we're going to talk about today. But I want to make the case for this item. I think it's really underpurchased, and I think it's super strong right now. It's only about 2,000 gold, 2050 gold, so it's the cheapest mainstream support item that you can get out there. And it's very cost efficient by itself, right? It's already 119% efficient just based off of these stats, not even with the active. And giving that 40% bonus movement speed out to allies, it's only on a 90-second cooldown too, is massive. I can't tell you how many times this has secured kills, right? Not only for yourself running in, but once again for the Darius running in, for the Set running in, for the Garen running in, just all of these champs that like this movement speed. It's so great for engage, and it can also save yourself and allies, right? If someone just comes in and ganks you out of nowhere, you can pop the Shirelias and run away. So I had someone on stream ask me earlier, and we'll get to Maokai here in a second, but why would you go Shirelias over Righteous Glory on Maokai? Well, that's just it. You know, the Righteous Glory only gives you the movement speed. It does apply a slow at the end of it, but it's still only you personally get the movement speed, and it can't be used defensively. And it's a lot more expensive. It's 2,600 gold. That's the big kick. But the thing is, this is just so flexible, so versatile. You can use it in all sorts of different places. It does give you some healing and shielding power. It gives you a pretty good chunk of health for a defensive item. That's great. And then the mana regen and even the health regen in the laning phase can be great. Anytime you can go back and just grab like a couple of fairy charms and a reju bead, especially on a champ that can harass as well as Nami can, is going to be really strong. And the thing is, Athene's is very, very similar in profile, and this is why Athene's has been kind of really strong for quite a long time too, is that it builds out of all these little charms, right? Like you can get a couple of fairy charms, you can get an amp tome, get a null magic mantle for some magic resist in the laning phase. It's just all the components are super friendly. It really gives you a lot of flexibility with your back timings, allows you to be able to get some control wards. Because if you start to get expensive items out there, you know, if you're trying to complete like great glacial shrouds or blasting wands or things like that, sometimes those can get a little expensive and can stretch your budget a bit and can put you in some weird situations with warding or other items that you might want to purchase. So that's my case for Shirelias. I think it's super strong. And so I wouldn't necessarily rush it on Nami because you're not a hard engaged champ, but I do think that having it, or at least considering it somewhere in your build, if you have champions that would like that extra stickiness, can be really good. Most of the time you want the Athenes because it just powers up your trading like through the roof, because it gives you a lot of early game AP. It's 50 base, and then if you have Frostfang, that's an extra 10, so it's 60 base AP for 2,100 gold that just powers up over time. Gives you the magic resist, which is great for trading, and then also saves up those charges. And so it can do the damage and distribute those charges on the same blow. So if you hit somebody for 200 pre-mitigation damage and then it bounces over to your ally, then it's going to heal them up for an additional 70 off of that heal on one spell once again. So that's what makes it so strong, is when it's bouncing around, it's already distributing those Athene stacks so that it's very rare that you overflow on your stacks. So yeah, I think a lot of that just makes Nami really, really good right now. She's just very versatile. Also, the ranges on her spells are something that a lot of people underestimate. You know, her W harass range is 725, which is massive. I mean, Lulu to walk up and hit somebody with your shield, your point click shield, is 650. Janna's, I believe, is about 600 to 650. Janna's is weird because it's based on the model of the champion, but it's about 600 or 650. So a lot of these point click champions, Sona, yes, you can harass further with the Q, but you really, to get the most out of Sona, you want to be auto attacking with those power chords as well, which is melee range 550 for Sona. So I mean, you want to attack with Nami when you go up too, but basically the 725 is really, really handy. And it's going to allow you to stay much further back, and it's less likely you're going to get engaged on by the enemy, and it allows you to have more spacing in team fights, so you're not going to get hit by random stuff like a Mumu ult, Ziggs ults, Rumble ults, get caught in like a Jarvan ult. It just allows you to stay out of all of that stuff and hang out really far in the back and still be very effective. And your Aqua Prison's 875, your Tidecaller's Blessing's 800, your Tidal Wave is almost 3,000, 2,800, so... that range is really, really nice for keeping you safe and for better positioning in the laning phase and in team fights. So, yeah, overall, I think Nami is going to be really strong. That should be a surprise to no one. She's one of the higher win rate champs. Now, something that I've been playing a lot personally is Maokai, and I think Maokai is really strong, and I'm going to make the case for this because people ask me all the time, why Maokai? I get teammates like pinging me, you know, why are you playing Maokai? Why are you building Shirelias? All this kind of stuff. And I think this is one of the most undercover things out there that's very, very good right now. So he does have the high win rate, and he has had a high win rate for quite a while. He's at like 53% win rate. So he's been up here for quite a while. He has a pretty low play rate. But I think there are several things that are contributing to why I believe he's stronger right now than a lot of people are giving him credit for. And it's possible that, you know, I missed the boat on this and he was strong a little bit earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and make the case for why he's strong now. And y'all know me on the channel. If you've been around for a long time, I am not one of the all caps hyper people. You know, I'm the kind of person where if someone like, you know, Rakan is the best support, I'm going to say Rakan is the best support for like 6 months straight. Or like with Janna, I'm going to say Janna's the best support for like a year straight, like in Season 7. I don't remember if it was the whole year, but I'm honest with you guys, right? I'm not trying to sell you something and just say, oh, I got the new secret thing you never heard of before, you know? But if that happens, then I tell you about it. Then I let you know. But, you know, I always try to be as honest and forthright as I can in trying to help you win games, because my goal is not necessarily to get clicks on the videos. That's good, that's great, but is to give you good, solid information to help you win and help you appreciate the game a little bit more. But this is one that is kind of undercover, right? Another one that I had promoted a while ago, I think that was in Season 7, was the Malzahar support. And people thought I was crazy about Malzahar support too. He got changed in patch 7.23 or 7.24. I watched a Firewall video, you know, where he was one of the OG people that was always hyping up weird Korean builds and all that stuff, and now everybody does it. But I was watching those, and I was like, you know what? That actually seems like that could be pretty good. So, you know, it's like a needle in a haystack. Sometimes those videos do have some interesting stuff in it that can work out. And this was one of them. And I was, you know, this guy that I duoed with, I was playing it with him, and he thought I was trolling. Other people in the game thought I was trolling. Everybody thought it was bad until people in the LCS a month later started cranking it out. I said Soraka was really OP and super strong near the end of November. Climbed back up to Diamond, had like a 60% win rate with Soraka through Platinum. All of a sudden, you know, everyone starts talking about Soraka, especially when she goes into the top lane and all this stuff in like January and February. So sometimes I am ahead of the curve. I miss the boat on some things, but I think this is one that is really understudied that you can take advantage of right now. So why Maokai? What's up with Maokai? Why is he rising up? Well, he hasn't received too many direct buffs. I think he did get some within like the last year or so, but it's really just changes to the meta that have happened overall. So he did get a couple of things. On 921, the mana cost was reduced to 60 at all ranks. This was like near the very end of Season 9. So that was a huge mana savings there, because this is what you'll max second. And then the base damage was increased a little bit, but that mana reduction is huge. And then the root duration was increased also a little bit, which wasn't a big deal. And then 9-9, he got a little bit more damage. So that was really the most sort of pivotal thing that was changed. But even then, I don't think he was that great. But I think a lot of it has been the shifting meta. So big thing that has happened is Leona and Nautilus have been nerfed fairly significantly multiple times. So they're still okay, but both of those back in like December and January, they were floating around 53 or 54% win rate every game, and now they're down quite a bit. Leona's down into like 51.5, and Nautilus is at about 50-50 now. And they took a lot of their damage out of the early game equation. And you still want engaged champs a lot of times in the support role. We're seeing like a return to split pusher type of champs in the top more often. Ornn got nerfed quite a bit, so you're not seeing him as much anymore in the top lane. But you're starting to see a return of these kind of split push champs, especially, like Irelia with the new Blade of the Ruined King. And there's a lot of things like that just want to dominate that aren't the hard tanks top. And then the tanks are good in the jungle, but a lot of people still aren't playing them as much as they probably should in the jungle. So I think that having some sort of engaged tank is good, but the Nautilus and the Leona have been nerfed. So what about Maokai then makes him strong? Well, one of the biggest things, and also in the meta, Lucian and Vayne are becoming a lot more popular right now. They've nerfed out some of the other early game bully champions, so they've nerfed Jhin a couple of times. That was really how they changed the critical strike stuff around. Jhin fell off a little bit. But we're seeing a rise more and more and more of Lucian, of Vayne coming back into the meta. And that's really why I started looking at Maokai, because Rakan is not that great into Lucian and Vayne, at least not at like the low diamond, high platinum level, because it's so easy to dodge his W if you don't have your ult going, because it's just, a very low cooldown dash, and you're out of there, right? So I wanted something that was good against mobility, and then I was just kind of thinking about Maokai, and I tried him out, and this Twisted Advance is so good for that. There's no way they dodge this. You are on them, right? The only way they can get out of Twisted Advance is if they have some sort of stopwatch ability, right? Stasis type of effect, and a lot of champions aren't going to have that unless they literally have stopwatch in the ADC role. So Lucian and Vayne can't dive out of it. You're also untargetable, so nothing can peel you. So not only is it a point click, you're going to get on them no matter what, but a Janna Tornado can't peel you, a Thresh Flay can't peel you, Veigar's Cage can't stop you. You just get through everything with that Twisted Advance. So that's very, very good for getting on that back line and locking people down. So if you just flash and then Twisted Advance on somebody, they're probably going to die. Right, so that's number one, is that this allows you to go untargetable. And there are some like little tricks you can do with that too. You can reset tower aggro, you can dodge like a Karthus ult, you can dodge skill shots. If something's close, like an enemy minion or something, you can use that W to dodge like a Jinx rocket or something like that. So that doesn't come up all the time, but it is a nice little perk to have there. And it does only cost 60 mana like we talked about before. It is relatively short range though, so it's not like a hook, a Nautilus hook or a Leona engage. All of those are going to be over 900 range, so it's only 525. So that's one of the major drawbacks, that he can be kited potentially. That's where the Shirelius is going to come in, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But that's one of his things, is he's kind of closer range, so he can get on there, he can peel. It is guaranteed, but it is short range. Bramble Smash is another one that's very powerful. It's only 50 mana at all ranks, so both of these spells, only 50 mana, only 60 mana. That's going to be huge with the itemization, which we'll talk about here in just a second. But at all ranks, it's only 50 mana, and it can go up to 250 damage on a 5-second cooldown. So that's very similar if you compare that to Nautilus. Nautilus is a 5-second cooldown on his E, which also does about that much damage in most scenarios, but it's 90 mana instead. So it's almost twice as much mana. And this is a knockback, so that means that you can knock people out of stuff, right? So if Rammus is running at you with his power ball, or Nunu's trying to snowball at you, or Zac is trying to fly over a wall, or Jarvan's trying to flag and drag, Thresh just hooked your ADC and he's about to try to fly in there on him. Leona's coming at you and you want to knock her back. You can do that with Bramble Smash. So it's almost like a little mini Janna Tornado that not only knocks people up, but also knocks them back 300 yards. So that can help push people off of you, or if you get the Twisted Advance on somebody, you can actually push them back into your team 300. So you're not only engaging and rooting them for a little while, but you're actively pushing them back into your team. So very, very handy ability, very aggressive mana cost. Even at 600 range, you can harass with this, which is something I'm trying to work on a little bit more in the laning phase. You can actually walk up, and that's going to outrange a lot of ADCs. Most ADCs have about 550 attack range, especially those short range ones. You know, Lucian's got 500, and then it's either 500 or 525. And then Vayne's going to have 550. So you can walk up and harass them whenever they're trying to last hit them. It also doesn't have diminishing returns against minions, so you can push really, really well. Put them in the tower, go get some deep vision in their jungle, go contest Scuttle, go get a dragon, go roam middle, get a preferable back timing. You know, being able to push is a huge, huge advantage in the bottom lane in solo queue most of the time, and he pushes and harasses very well with that Bramble Smash. And it's a low cooldown, so, you know, if you do it just to try to harass, you know, it's going to be back up again in 6 seconds. So there's not a lot of opportunity for them to punish you, even if you miss with the Bramble Smash. And then Sapling Toss, and this is one of the most unique abilities that I just love whenever I'm playing Maokai. This is such a well-rounded ability. It's only 60 mana. You only put 1 point in this, and if it goes in a bush and then comes outside of the bush, it's 14% of their maximum health damage on a 1-point spell. That's so much. So early game, it's going to hurt them, but even as they get more health on and on and on into the game, it can do quite a bit of damage. It's only on a 10-second cooldown, and it stays there for at least 30 seconds. And if you have a good chunk of bonus health, it's going to be even more. But even at its baseline, it's still 30 seconds. It's basically a free ward. It doesn't provide, you know, as much vision as an actual ward, but the fact that you can spam this out there very efficiently and it's going to watch for you is great. And it sees through control wards as well, right? So you can put this, if they have that control ward in bot side, if you're on red side and they have the Tribush control warded, you can put a sapling in there. And it's going to tell you if somebody walks through. You know, the control ward's not going to shut it off. So that's really, really nice. So it's not like traps that get shut off by sweepers and things like that. Now, they can walk up there and try to bait it out and try to run away from it, but that's going to take them time to walk over there, and they're probably going to get hit by it and take free damage. And then you can just throw it back over there again in 10 seconds. So this just gives you so much vision later on in the game. You know, if you, for example, need to put some wards around Baron to make sure they're not doing Baron, but your team needs to go over and take that dragon, the third dragon or whatever, no problem. You can have your wards around Baron, make sure they're not going over there. Then you can use the saplings to help you get solid vision control around the dragon area. So it's just so great to have this extra vision. And it's 1100 range, which is huge. You can definitely check every bush super safe. And not only does it check the bush, it stays in the bush and guards it for you. So super, super great ability. And you can throw this ahead of people, right? So if someone is trying to run away, like you engage on them with Twisted Advance, and you know they're probably going to flash out, you can throw this sapling where you think they're going to flash, and he's going to stand there and wait. If they come close, he's going to run at them and slow them for an additional 35% for 2 seconds, non-decaying slow. And that happens even if they don't go into the bush. So just really, really good with that range. You can even harass people under tower if you want. It's not a ton of damage, but it's 7 damage, or 7% of someone's max health damage for 60 mana, so it's not that bad. And then on top of that, you have Nature's Grasp. So this is it's almost like a Nami wave. It's pretty slow. It's got 3,000 range, but it roots for so long. Nami, whenever it hits you, it's going to slow you for a while, for like 3 seconds, up to 3 seconds when you get hit. But this roots you where you can't move. And it doesn't have to go that far to get a big root on you, right? So even if it's only 5 to 600 range, so about his W range. So if you start your ult and then just Shurelya's at him and W him, and then Q and push him back into your Nature's Grasp, it's still going to root him for about 2 seconds. And this hits everybody. This is so wide. It doesn't tell you this here, but it is so wide, it's insane. It's almost impossible to dodge this in a team fight. So it's going to root up their entire team, usually for about 1.5 to 2 seconds. So it's just a tremendous amount of CC. And he has good sustain in the laning phase. That's one thing that Nautilus and Leona, they can be poked out by things like Nami, by things like Janna. Maokai is going to be a little bit more resilient to that because he can heal himself even off of minions whenever he just auto attacks him. You know, every so often, if he's getting hit by spells and spells that he casts and all this, you know, you're going to be healing yourself probably every 15 to 20 seconds for, you know, somewhere around 6% of your max health with a little bit extra. So that's pretty good sustain. So yeah, that's why I think Maokai is just so good. He's got that point click engage. He has supreme vision control, some of the best vision control of any support in the game. He's got that Bramble Smash, which is like a crazy wave clearing Janna tornado thing. That does good AoE damage in team fights too. So he's just got a ton of stuff going for him. And because of his cheap mana costs and just some of his other unique properties that he has about him, he has some pretty special options in terms of build as well. So if we click on the Maokai here, the number one thing that I've been rushing lately that I think is awesome is that Shurelya's. And I think Shurelya's is fantastic on Maokai. Because one of the only things that's kind of holding you back as Maokai a lot of times is being able to get in range for your W, especially if you don't have flash. So if you just start your ult and then you Shurelya's and run your team in there, and then his W on top of somebody, you're going to win the team fight 9 times out of 10. Because that Bramble is just going to be slowly, creeping through there, and it's going to hit them for that 2 to 2.5 second route. And they're not going to be able to run away from you and your ally. They're not going to be able to peel you, right? Once you're in range for that 500, you go untargetable, boom. They're not going to be able to flash you. So it's just a super, super reliable engage. And then those items early on in the laning phase that we mentioned before are great on him. Getting some fairy charms, awesome. That means you can push in more with Bramble Smash, go for more harass. You can throw more saplings to, monitor dragon, make sure that the enemy's not taking dragon on you, monitor certain bushes. I mean, from 1100, you can just about throw this thing, if you're on blue side, you can just about throw it into the blue golem bush from the river. Like, you don't even have to step into the jungle and risk getting caught. It's that far. Like, you can throw it forever. You can throw it from the dragon pit over, I think you can reach, I know you can reach the little brush that's kind of close to the raptors, and I think that you can reach the brush that's close to red buff as well. So you can throw this thing really, really far and get great vision without putting yourself very much at risk. So just having those fairy charms is good early. If you think you're going to be getting harassed by Nami or Janna or whatever, you can get an early rejuve bead, and that's going to help you sustain through it. The extra mana, the more spells you're casting also means you're going to get more of your passive, which is going to allow you to heal a bit more. So he just has great synergy with all of that stuff. Now, the plus healing and shielding off of Shurelya's is a little weird because you're not going to be healing that much. But if you take Font of Life, that does count as a heal from you. And so that will increase your Font of Life healing a little bit, not a lot. But it does increase your sap magic healing, which can add up. So yes, the plus healing and shielding is not insane on it, but it's not a waste either. It's not like it's Nautilus or Leona who have no healing. So that can be pretty decent. And if you do want to go for something like a redemption, which is possible, it does scale very, very well with redemption, because remember, you get triple the benefit of plus healing and shielding on that redemption circle. So a lot of times, if we're really far ahead and they just don't have enough damage to kill me, I'll just get a redemption. Just go Shurelya's redemption. And you might say, well, doesn't that make you too squishy? It's like, well, you do get the healing off of the redemption. You get the healing off of your sap magic. And a lot of times the fights are going to be over pretty fast. You're not going to get hit while you're in Twisted Advance. That's going to dodge a lot of the stuff. And then they're just going to be CC'd up, right, from this Nature's Grasp. And after you spam everything on them, you can just trigger your passive and usually walk out while they're rooted up, and your team just cleans them up. So sometimes it is a little too squishy, but sometimes it's not. So those are a couple of pretty good options there. And then the Gargoyle Stone Plates. You can go Shurelya straight into Gargoyle, and Gargoyle is going to give you good magic resist, good armor, and then it's going to allow you to press the active there to give you a lot more survivability once you go in there, once you get that CC going. So you don't have to go a mana item with Maokai. You don't have to go Zeke's, right? And so that frees you up to be able to get these things faster, to get a Gargoyle faster. Or you could even get like a Knight's Vow if they have a lot of physical damage on their team and they don't have much magic damage. You can just get a Knight's Vow after that. So I think that that's really good. I switched. What did I switch to? I think I've been trying out Magical Footwear and Cosmic Insight. And I'm not sure if this is 100% correct. I had been thinking about the Movement Rune or like Taste of Blood or something like that for trading. We'll see, but these are both pretty good runes here. I mean, the Tenacity Rune and the Presence of Mind can be really good as well. You don't always need the mana, but it is nice if you get it for free off of Presence of Mind. So I don't know. I think there are a lot of different options out there that you can do for for secondary runes if you want to do that. But oh, this should be conditioning, not. They did nerf conditioning, but I still think it's going to be better than bone plating in a lot of situations. But yeah, I think all of these just, set it up perfectly. So just try him out, see what you think. I've been having a lot of success with him lately. He does have a high win rate overall. And, the biggest thing is just that reliable, guaranteed engage, tons and tons of CC, and the supreme vision control that only Maokai, can give you with just the crazy sapling bush control that you can get around the map. It's just... You really got to play it to understand just how strong that vision control is with those saplings as a support. But anyways, try him out. I think he's the biggest secret right now in League of Legends, at least at the support role. So definitely get on it before. I think there have been some pros, or at least some high-level players, thinking about playing Maokai support now. Has he been played in pro? I thought I saw some games where people were trying him out. Okay, so there's no data on 10.7. Are they still all playing on 10.6? But I have seen some top-end players. Okay, so it looks like people aren't really on it. I'm not sure how accurate this is as far as the tournaments and stuff go. But I have been seeing some of the top-end supports practicing and trying him out. Now, a lot of times he is getting played with Senna, fasting Senna builds. So he's just rushing... Sunfire Cape and pushing, kind of like a Thresh-ish type of champ. But I think people are going to realize he's really good even without the fasting Senna to go with it. So anyways, try him out, see what you think. I think he's really strong right now. Okay, Rakan is the other one, and I still think that Rakan is a very strong champion. He scales really well off of his shielding. I mean, y'all have heard about Rakan if you've been part of the channel forever. Just very mobile. He can go in, start fights with his W. He can get back out with his shield. Really flexible itemization. He can also rush a Shirelias, either first or second items. You can still go Zeke's if you want. You can rush a Shirelias. You can get Shirelias second. You can get Redemption if you want to off of him. So there's so many different... You can even get Ardent Sensor. If your AD carry is really far ahead and you have your Zeke's and then your Vayne's like 4-0, you can even get an Ardent Sensor to go with that. So I think there are still a lot of different things with Rakan. He is still great with vision control because... he can go pretty deep in the jungle and be pretty far out of position and still get away with his free dash off of his W. So he does have a bit of a harder time against Lucian and Vayne, as I mentioned before. Not fantastic against Ezreal either. And all of those are really good because they can all dodge your W very easily. Now you can kind of get around that once you have your ult, especially if you have Shirelias. You're going to be able to run in and wait on them to dash, and then you can W after them. But it is kind of a pain to get around. And then up against something like a Maokai is a nightmare. Maokai is extremely good against Rakan. You just press W on that. Maokai's not super popular, but you just press W on him and just completely lock him down, shut down all of his movement. It's a real feels bad for Rakan, that matchup. And Rakan can kind of have a hard time against Bard. We'll talk about Bard here in a second, but because you have to... your shield involves you jumping over and standing next to somebody else, it's setting you up perfectly for the Bard to land that empowered Q where it's going to root you both. So I think that there are some champions that are rising in popularity right now that aren't really that great for Rakan to go into. But nevertheless, he's still super flexible. I've talked about it time and time again. Just his itemization and the way he can play the game. It doesn't matter if your AD carry's feeding. You can find a way to play around mid lane. You can find a way to play around top lane. And he does still have one of the better engages in the game. Now, I think Maokai with Shirelias is some pretty next level engage too. But Rakan is still going to be quite strong. So don't sleep on Rakan. I think he is very good right now. It's still a great time to play him. Particularly if they have a champ that doesn't have a dash to get away from his W, right? So if they're playing Misfortune or they're playing Jhin or something like that, it can be pretty good. Jinx is pretty annoying to go against because if she drops those chompers down, you can't dash back over those. You have to walk around them. So that can be really frustrating to try to get through Jinx if she knows what she's doing with those chompers to block you. But nevertheless, I do think that Rakan is still going to be really strong. Now, Yuumi is another one here. And it's just as far as the items and stuff on Rakan. It's hard to read a guide. You just have to play him a lot and get a sense because there's so many different things you can do. I do favor getting the defensive boots right now, either Mercury Treads or Mobility Boots, Ninja Tabby or Mercury Treads. You can do Mobies if you just happen to have 700 laying around with your brown boots and you want to be able to move around. But that 100 extra gold is actually a pretty big deal, so it just kind of depends. I don't like the swiftness. I know some people were trying that out. It's nice, but I think you're just overpaying too much for that. That it's not enough movement speed. Getting that magic resist and the Ninja Tabby are really, really strong. Or the armor if you go Ninja Tabby. And especially if you're going to go for one of those squishier items like a Shirelia's second or an Ardent Sensor or something like that, having some resist on your boots does help out a ton in making sure that you don't get blown up. Now, I've kind of backed off the Frozen Heart train a little bit. I was trying that out. If they have literally all AD, then Frozen Heart can still be pretty good, but it is a little bit on the expensive side, and frankly, you just don't need that much mana late game as Rakan, so you're kind of overpaying for the mana. But if they do have a lot of auto attackers, or they're literally all AD, then it can be pretty good. So yeah, that's what I would go. And then I think that Guardian, Demolish, I've actually been taking Font a little bit more. Big reason for that is if you do take Ardent Sensor, it's a lot easier to distribute the Ardent Sensor buff to everybody if you have Font, because how that works, if you don't know, if you CC somebody and then someone on your CC an enemy and then someone on the enemy team auto attacks that person, that heal from Font of Life counts as a heal coming from you, and it triggers the Ardent Sensor on that person. So if you just R plus W engage on someone on their team and everyone on your team auto attacks them, then everyone on your team is going to get the Ardent Sensor buff, right? So then you don't have to worry about, okay, I need to shield the AD carry, and then I need to use one shield on my Rengar who's about to engage on him, and stuff like that to distribute the Ardent Sensor to the most optimal users. You can just focus the shield on the person who needs the actual shield, the actual healing the most, and not have to worry about the Ardent procs. So I think both of those are good. And then you can kind of feel it out. If they don't have a lot of CC, you can go Revitalize. Go Revitalize, especially if you think you're going to do Redemption. But if they have a lot of CC, you can go Unflinching. As far as secondary goes, my default is Ghost Poro Ulti Hunter. The Ghost Poro does give you some great extra vision early on. Rakan scales really well with AP, and you should be able to complete the Ghost Poro chain around like 15 to 20 minutes, which gives you 30 extra AP. So that's about a 600 gold value. Really nice. And then the Ulti Hunter itself, you have a really high impact ult that should be a kill pretty much every time it's up. So getting a lower cooldown on that is fantastic, especially now that they took the CDR off of the warding item, which they did in the preseason. Then having that extra CDR is a lot harder to come by. So I think that's really handy. If you're against a ton of CC, you can still go Presence of Mind plus Legend Tenacity if you want. Once again, Rakan doesn't have huge mana problems past like the first few levels, but it still can be useful. Okay, let's talk about Yuumi here. Now, I'm personally not going to be playing Yuumi a lot. I think she's very risky, but that doesn't mean that she's not very strong. Sometimes some of the things that don't really perform that well in solo queue can be some of the strongest things when they're played right in the right circumstances, right? So Yuumi is just extremely dangerous, because if she just sticks around, if you don't close out the game on her, she just brings a whole lot to the team. She gives a lot of movement speed to people like the Darius, Olaf, Set, Garen, all of these meatball type of champs that are still going to be really strong. And you can't pick her off. You can't kill her like other enchanters. So that's going to give her some kind of innate survivability against assassins. And then she has decent poke in the laning phase if you consistently land your Q. And she gives that extra attack speed as well on her E. So not only does it give a big shield and it gives people a lot of movement speed, but it's also going to give people up to 45% extra attack speed, which scales really well with Ardent Sensor. So whenever she gets Athene's plus Ardent Sensor, it just feels like it's almost impossible to kill somebody, right? Because they're going to have so much movement speed. She's going to burst heal them for like 1,000 with all the plus healing and shielding and Revitalize and the Athene's procs and all that stuff. It's just really hard to burst people out. And then she has a pretty large hitbox ultimate that can root a team for 1.75 seconds. So, does she lose some games? Yes, she loses some games, okay? She's got like a 49% win rate or something like that. But just keep in mind, I'm not going to bring it up here, but I've talked about this in past tier list videos. Even when she was considered super OP and, pick ban every game in pro, and she had like a 45% win rate in solo queue. She only had like a 48% win rate overall. And just keep in mind too that when everyone is crying, that Irelia was OP in the last couple of years, and Aatrox, who else? Whenever Azir's really OP, there are a lot of these champions that don't necessarily have a high win rate, but that when the circumstances are perfect for them, then they can be really good, or if the person is super skilled on them. Yuumi requires a little bit more skill than people think than the meme is, because it can be really disorienting in team fights to jump around and just kind of keep track of your character, especially if people are hopping and dashing, and you might accidentally jump off of somebody because they dashed out of range when you were trying to jump on them, and you accidentally clicked off. And so it can be really disorienting and kind of tricky to navigate really complex team fights with her. So yeah, she's not as hard as something like Thresh or Bard to play and to master, but she's still harder than people think. She's still harder than something like Sona, if Sona is, kind of the baseline, one of the easiest champs to play. But yeah, I just think the best case scenarios are just so dangerous. If she just gets out of the laning phase and just anyone on the enemy team is doing well, she just makes it it's just so difficult to deal with them. And she buffs up their stats, as people know. She gives extra adaptive force. So if just anyone on their team is out of control and snowballing, she just compounds it and makes it so much worse. So yes, you can stomp her. Yes, if you kill the person she's attached to, you're going to get free kills. It's like a little piñata of gold whenever you kill them, if there's no one else around for her to jump to. But nevertheless, I just think that she's too risky for me. Like, I've tried her out, and yes, sometimes you just get smashed in lane and you can't do anything. You can't roam very well on Yuumi. You can't ward very well on Yuumi. But I've also played against people where, we smashed Yuumi in lane. We did really well, but then, our top laner fed and they have a 4-0 Darius, and Yuumi just, once the lanes break, she just attaches to Darius and they just run around and kill everybody. Or like Master Yi or Kassadin, or, just any of these like 1v9 type of champions out there. She just makes it very, very difficult to deal with them. So you can go no boots, which some high-end people do go no boots. It's really hard to ward and it's really hard to rotate, and if you have desynced backs, you're going to lose a lot of experience by not having boots. So I think if you're at gold and lower, I would get Ionian boots. If you're really high elo, you can get away with not getting any boots because your teammates are going to help you ward. They're going to rotate with you and things like that. And then Frostfang, and then just Athene's, Ardent Censer, or Redemption. You can do a Shurelya's if you want to double down on that engage for your team, but you already have quite a bit of speed up with your E that you can cast on people, so I would probably just go Athene's. Ardent Censer typically is what you'll get on her. So anyways, I think there are a lot of ways to win, and I think that she potentially can be a pretty dangerous champion, even though her win rate may not necessarily suggest that. Okay, and then Bard is the last of kind of the tier 1s that I'll mention here, and then we'll move really quickly through the rest of them. I'll be perfectly honest, I don't fully understand why Bard wins this much, but I do know that I hate going against Bard. He's just a punk, man. Like, he's so hard to get through. He just has good little harassment in the laning phase. His Q, if it binds to you, can do a decent chunk of damage. It has a good root on it. That ultimate, can completely ruin your day, right? You're trying to engage on somebody, he ults, and then they turn it around, or he ults on you to open for an engage, or he's roaming around, harassing your mid laner, warding up your jungle. So it does take a lot of games to be able to play him proficiently, but, I mean, he also does have a decent win rate of, like, 6.5% with a 54% play rate, so that's not all one-tricks that are playing him with that much of a win rate. So yeah, he's just really good over time. So the fact that the Leona, the Nautiluses, and things like that have been nerfed over time does help him. He does like the laning phase a bit more, and people have shifted towards this more utility build with like the Guardian, Revitalize, and then you end up going like Athene's Redemption. I know that people used to go I want to call it Thunderlords, but whatever, the lightning one. Doesn't it have that over here? It doesn't have the keystone here for some reason, but y'all know what I'm talking about. The New Age Thunderlords. People were doing that. Electrocute. There we go. People were doing it, but people have figured out now, well, what if I just go more defensive with Guardian and then just Font of Life to help trigger if I do want to go Ardent Sensor at some point, we could do that. And then just Revitalize and then just, go for Zombie Ward and Relentless Hunter. Now, some people were goofing around with like a Dead Man's Plate rapid fire build. Some people still do that, and it's okay. But I don't know. It's all right. I've seen both ways work really well with the Athene's opener or the Dead Man's Play. I think Athene's is much more stable. It's a much cheaper item. It has more synergy with your kits. I would probably stick with Athene's into Redemption most of the time. But yeah, he's just got good early game aggression and just real good like disruption later on in the game. So a lot of potential. You can sneak up on people and get some really good ganks with that tunnel as well if you like bring your jungler with you. So what's he weak against? Seems like he still has a good win rate against most champions out there. Looks like he still wins against Maokai. Maokai seems to be one of the better ones out there. But yeah, his win rate by game length, as you can tell, starts going down quite a bit because he doesn't scale that well, right? Like his abilities don't have any, like his Q has a small AP ratio, right? The W has a small AP ratio, but his ult and his E have no AP ratios. So he really doesn't scale that well. So like right off the bat, just his baseline damage is pretty high with the Meeps, and the Athenes, add some extra utility, and then you've got Redemption scaling with the Athenes, and then that's kind of where it's over, right? He needs to win the game by that point. Because after that, you're going to be a lot less effective most of the time. So, anyways, I think that Bard can be really effective, but you got to put the games in. You got to try to master him. So this is what people had done. I need to change that up. Font of Life. I would go with either bone plating or conditioning, honestly. Maybe bone plating just for better trades in the laning phase. Revitalize is one of the best runes in the game if you have any healings. That's really good. And then I would probably go Taste of Blood and Relentless Hunter. Taste of Blood's going to allow you to trade a little bit better in the laning phase. So yeah, I'd probably roll with that, and then Athene's into Redemption. You pretty much always want Moby Boots on him. So yeah, he's coming back in. It's, I don't, like I said, I don't fully understand all of it. I do know that part of it is that some of those hard engaged champs have been nerfed out a little bit. And he can bully things like Janna around in the laning phase. He can bully some of those melee champs around in the laning phase. So he just has a lot of favorable interactions out there. Okay, so Bard's going to be strong. And then the last few here that we'll go over just in the last 10 minutes or so. Lulu, I still think is pretty good. She's got a 52% win rate. I haven't personally found a ton of success on her. She feels strong. She feels powerful. But then I just don't get the win on her. A lot, and that's been that way almost every season. I just have like a negative win rate anytime I try to play Lulu. But she does have a lot of potential. They did buff her up a few patches ago. I think her shield is back to 220. It might even be 240, and it's on an 8-second cooldown, so that does make it one of the better shields out there. It also doesn't decay like Janna's shield does, but it only lasts for 2.5 seconds. So that's really handy. And if you do have some of these champions that build a lot of attack speed, then picks can trigger a ton of extra damage. Why am I... They sort of changed these square patterns. Oh, there she is. Okay. So yeah, good shield now, all the way up to the 240. And the shield strength is a 0.6. That's pretty good. Nice point click harassment. Now it's only 650 range, but they can't dodge it. So good point click. It also sets up for your Q, which doesn't do a lot of damage, but 80 for 1 point is not terrible in the early game. And then really this Whimsy, giving out the 45% attack speed and a lot of extra movement speed, up to usually about 35% movement speed, is going to be really strong if you have like a really fed Vayne, Kai'Sa, Master Yi, any of these other auto-attacking type of champions, especially champs that are going to get Gensus, are going to be pretty good with that. And you have polymorph, right? So if they do have a champion that, if the CC is going to completely like crush their kit. So for example, like Echo is a pretty good one in theory. If you can polymorph him before he can ult, then he's going to be really squishy because that's a huge part of his survivability is his ult. So if you can poly him before that happens, or if you poly set before he can trigger his W, or, you know, just any assassin that's trying to get on you and you polymorph him, that's a really powerful ability. The only problem with that is you have to choose. Do you polymorph or do you whimsy, right? Do you buff up your own team or do you debuff the enemy? So the fact that you have that choice there is pretty rough. I wish that they would move over the attack speed and put that on picks. Maybe that would be too strong, but I would like to see them do that, or get the movement speed over there. That would kind of be like karma if they put the shield on it. But if they put picks on it and gave you attack speed, I think that would be unique. There aren't other supports, I don't think, that give out. Yuumi gives out the attack speed, but giving out the attack speed on the shield, I think would be pretty good. But it's not how it works. You know, you would be able to polymorph and give out the attack speed. Maybe that's too strong, but either way, she does have some tools. It's just you can't use all of them at the same time. You have to choose. And then Pix itself does quite a bit of damage. I mean, level 9, 63 damage. You have 100 AP. That's all the way up to 78 damage. Almost 80 damage per auto attack. So that's what I'm saying. If they're attacking a lot with Vayne or Kai'Sa or Yi, then it's just going to be cranking out that damage. So the Pix gives out a ton of damage. Now, that doesn't trigger with Gensu's. It's on attack, not on hit. So it doesn't get that crazy, but it still is really nice later on. And then she does have a really low cooldown ult. It's only 110 seconds. Just boom, nice infusion of health. Gets around any grievous wounds effects, ignites, Morellonomicons, executioners. All that stuff just gives them a huge burst of health and allows them to knock somebody up in the air and give a nice little slow for 7 seconds. So very good single target stuff, right? A single target shield, single target buff there, single target debuff on Whimsy, or single target buff on your enemy. The problem is, like some of these other champs, a lot of it's multi-target, right? Like Yuumi can CC a lot of people with her ultimate, right? Nami can hit a lot of people with her ultimate, with her bubble, with her wave. She's hitting multiple things. You know, Maokai can CC a ton of people. Rakan can CC a ton of people. So that's really where one of the big things are, is like in a major team fight, I feel like she has the potential to fall off a little bit. And she is extremely vulnerable herself, too, right? A lot of her stuff is closer cast range than Nami. It's 650 on Whimsy, 650 on Help Picks. That makes it more likely you're going to get, you know, hit by an assassin, hit by an Amumu ult, or, you know, hit by, like, Misfortune channeling an ult. You're just going to be a lot more vulnerable because it's going to be harder to space out and get away from stuff. So I think that she can be really good. I think that especially into these close-range champions like the Vayne, like the Lucian, I think Whimsy can be really good. Help Picks does reveal Vayne, by the way, as well. So if she's tumbling around invisible, it is going to let you know where she goes. So that's really handy for invisible champions, or like Kha'Zix, things like that. So anyways, I think that she does have a lot of potential. She does have like a 52% win rate right now. So she's definitely respectable, but and she can't start fights personally, but the Whimsy being able to speed your allies up to go start the fight for you is very handy, and you can get a Shurelya's on her, maybe second or third item, and be pretty comfortable. She loves to get Ardent Sensor first because it synergizes so well with the Help Picks and the Whimsy to allow you to crank out even more damage. But after that, it's kind of up to you. Shurelya's is an option, though, if you want to take that. Okay, Janna's another one. Really good disengage right now. You know, if they do have a bunch of dive on their team, they have a Zac or they have a set or something like that, Janna can peel back. Her shield does give the extra AD, so it does provide some extra damage, particularly someone who's going to get the big crits like your Jinx, maybe your Jhin, those types of champs, and Janna can be pretty good. She is very fast, so she can rotate around the map really well with her W, place really good vision, put a lot of pressure on mid lane, put a lot of pressure on the enemy jungle. You're one of the best or fastest roamers in the game, I should say, because you get a lot of extra speed off of your W. And you do have point-click harassment in the laning phase, you know, that I think has like 600 or 650 range. So you can usually walk up and just spam W on the enemy ADC whenever they're trying to last hit, get some extra damage in there. Just don't take too much minion aggro. You got to jump in and out of that bush, or make sure the wave's thin before you do that. But Overall, like, okay harassment early, good roaming, good scaling. Big problem is that shield, the cooldown is just insanely high early on. I think it's like either 18 or 16 seconds. It's really, really long, and you have to level up your offense, your W. You have to choose how far do you go with your W for harassment, because every point you put in W is going to put you behind on your shield. Versus some of these other champions like Nami, she just maxes W no matter what. That's her offensive and her heal, right? Thinking about Lulu, if you max your shield, that's your offense, right? That's you E to hit them with the enemy cast, and then you also have it leveled up to go for the shield for the ally cast. So she has to choose between those two different modes, and I think that can be it can make the transition tough from trying to be have a lot of presence in the laning phase to being really strong in the mid game to fight for those dragons and rift heralds and things like that. So she does have a high win rate. She can be very strong, but she can't start fights by herself. She is very squishy, and just the way that you have to level up your skills can get a little awkward when you're doing that transition from early to mid game. Okay, Blitzcrank. Not a lot to be said there. You land your hook, you're a god. You miss your hook, you're pretty much worthless. So very one-dimensional champion, but if you're very good at that one dimension, he's great. He does so much damage. If you land the hook, it's got a huge hitbox, has the largest range of any of the mainstream hooks, and just does a ton of damage. You land that hook, you knock him up, you press your ult, you can one-shot squishies by yourself a lot of times as Blitzcrank, but you got to make sure that you land it. I mean, I've seen so many games decided. We lost a game, late in the game, it was like 40 minutes, they hooked our ADC or something over a wall with Blitzcrank. Boom, they got the kill, and then they ran us off a dragon. They got Dragon Soul, and that was pretty much the downfall of the game. So even though, I had it warded, we knew they were in the area, ADC just wasn't cautious, got hooked, game over. So Blitzcrank always has that, right? He's always got especially if the enemy team has a lot of squishies, a lot of people are still not playing tanks in most roles. So that's a lot of targets. Now, if they have 2 or 3 tanks on their team, then that's going to be a problem, right? So if they're running like top lane Maokai, jungle Zac, and bot lane Leona or something, late game that's not going to be as good, because if you hook one of those tanks in there, it could actually work against you if they get to engage on you from the back line like that. So against squishies, if they only have 1 tank or less, he's going to be a great pick. He is banned a lot, so keep that in mind too. But if they have a lot of tanks, it can get a little sketchier late in the game, especially if those tanks are positioning specifically to block you and to protect the squishies. Okay, Nautilus, still pretty good. He's got good wave clear. He's got a good hitbox, fat hitbox on his hook. He's got a point-click ultimate, can't dodge it. Could potentially knock up multiple people. Just his damage is down quite a bit. It's a lot harder to pressure people and kill him early on. He doesn't have any sustain. So if he gets poked out, if he gets knocked down to like half health, it's really hard to engage, because if you don't kill him on that engage, then you're going to die, or you're going to take a really bad trade and you're going to be worthless in the laning phase. So that's really kind of where it is with Nautilus. His defensive steroid is fairly weak early on compared to something like a Leona even. But I still, put him up here just because he is so reliable still, right? It's got a fat hitbox on his Q. His ultimate, hits those multiple people. And then you can also use your hook to hit towers and get away. So if a gank's coming in, you can get away from stuff like that, which is something that a lot of tanks can't do that well. So he can be good, but I feel like he is a little bit more frail than he used to be. There have been nerfs to Aftershock 2 in the preseason. So he's still pretty good. You can definitely get away with playing Nautilus, and you can be pretty strong. But if you like Nautilus, I highly recommend you try Maokai out. I just think he's just a better version of Nautilus right now. Sorry, Gray Graves. I know Graves loves Nautilus. I love Nautilus too. Nautilus is a lot of fun, but I feel like the new age is the Maokai right now. And then Sona is probably the last one that I'll mention here in depth. She still scales like a monster. They did buff her, give her back some of her movement speed on her W. She's just super frail. If she does get engaged on by a tank or by an assassin or really by anybody, she's going to die. But if you do have proper protection, if your team does have 2 or 3 tanks, then you can be very strong, right? You scale super well with Ardent Sensor, Athenes, and Redemption. If you get those 3 items and the fight lasts longer than 5 seconds, you win. If you get off 2 Ws on 3 different people and drop a Redemption on them, then it's pretty much lights out. They're not going to be able to catch up because you just do too much sustain healing with the Athenes, the Q, and the W spam. And your ult is very good for team fights. Great setup with a Moo, Misfortune, or any of those other AoE champs out there. But anyways, okay, that's going to be it. I do want to keep this under an hour. Some of these other, the tier 3, the Senna, Brand, Thresh, Zyra, Leona, those can all be pretty strong right now. I haven't really studied a lot of Set, but I think people are trying to play him a little bit too. So, you know, maybe try him out, and I'll see if I can talk about him a little bit more next time. But anyways, that's going to be it. Have a good day, and we'll see you next time.